Hi, welcome back to Music Theory Logic. My name's Andrew, and thanks for tuning in to another Music Theory Breakdown. If you haven't seen one of these before, basically what I do is I recreate a popular song so that I can show you all the notes used in the song in piano roll or MIDI, so that when you are producing in your own DAW, you can perhaps better understand and implement some music theory principles. So the song today is going to be Laugh Now, Cry Later, Drake featuring Lil Durk. Let's go ahead into the Logic Pro session. So here we are in my recreation of this track. If you haven't seen these before, I basically do my best to make the song this listenable, make it recognizable that it's the original song. I try to pick sounds and mix it in a way that's close, but I don't obsess about getting it sonically perfect. Just focus on getting all of the notes correct, because again, that's all we need for the music theory. So without further ado, here is my instrumental. It's a little empty without the vocals because this is a mellow song. Perhaps you'll be able to hear the harmonies better. Here we go. Texture starts to fill out. Sort of the intro. Here comes our drums and bass. Little break. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there since this instrumental repeats quite a bit. We don't need to hear the whole thing, especially since it sounds quite empty without the vocals. But that doesn't mean it's not a super cool instrumental. I like the jazzy texture. I like the mellow nature of it all. It's a pretty awesome track, and somewhat simple, simple and complex, if that's possible at the same time. The simple part is that we are in the key of A minor, essentially. So that means we are using only white keys on a keyboard or a piano. So if you were to find the note A, which looks like that, with a white key in the, above the second white key in the middle of three black keys. So if you can find the note A on a piano and you played all the white keys up to the matching note in the next octave, that A, you would have a A minor. And let's go ahead and listen to that. That's D, E, F, G, A. So we're using all of the musical alphabet, as we would say, or the letters that we have in music. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, first 7 letters of the alphabet. Cool. The chords that we're going to need, the 2 main chords that we're using are A minor, the 1 chord. We get that chord by skipping the scale degrees, so that would be an A, a C, and an E. And then our other chord that we get more often is D minor. We get that by skipping notes. It has D, F, and A. So the main idea with music theory, we have this thing, this fancy word called diatonic. And when we say that a song uses all diatonic chords, that means every note from all of the chords in the song come from one common scale. And in this case, it's A minor. The other chords we'll need are used in the passing sections of this groove. But we have an E minor. That's a minor 5 chord in the key of A minor. E, G, B. We've got an F major. That's a major 6 chord in the key of A minor. That has F, A, and C. And then finally, we got a G major. That's a major 7 in the key of A minor. That has G, B, and D. So let's go ahead and look at the main section of our MIDI. So I'll just loop this one section so we can watch it. Let me go to one that has the full. How about our piano? Um, cool. So essentially, the song starts out with an extra 4 bars. The first 4 bars of the main phrase gets repeated at the very beginning of the song, and then past that, we basically just have this 8-bar sequence that repeats. So the first 4 doubles up in the very beginning, and then it's just this 8 repeating the whole time. So the chords we have are F major, E minor, D minor. That's the walking down part. Then that little melodic section, we've got C, D, C. So that's like 3, 4, 3 in the key of A minor over an A. These notes together are the first and third note in the A minor chord, or the first and 3 in A minor, the first 2 notes in the A minor chord. So we could say this harmony is an A minor. So we're going F major, E minor, D minor, A minor. Then we come up and do a really similar thing, just from a higher note. We go from A minor, G major, F major, E minor, down to D minor. And we get the same melody on top, only we would say it's in parallel fifths. Instead of C, D, C alone, we get C and G together, D and A together, back to C and G together. So this essentially covers all of the notes from the instruments minus the bass, which we're going to talk about in a second after the drums. A couple things to talk about. One, it's quite interesting. It's not nearly as repetitive. So the phrasing, you're sort of having like a 3 measures, right? This followed by 5. So that's really uncommon in a lot of music that's popular. That's most music that's popular is in the time signature of 4/4. Typically in 4/4 music, we get ideas that are presented in groups of 2. But just the fact that we would expect the next part to really happen at the end of this 8 right here, because that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 measures, but instead it happens after 4. So that alone is quite interesting. Let's just play this a couple times while we can watch the MIDI. Cool. So there's some common things happening. We do this walking down each half notes of chords. That part repeats in this basically second phrase. It's just really the length that's kind of strange. So we're doing the descending chords down to our A minor chord with the riff. That riff happens twice. Then we do a descending progression down from A minor all the way down to D minor, and we get that little melodic riff 3 times. So again, that's pretty strange. I can't even think of a song I've done a music theory breakdown on, that has such a strange phrase structure, as we would say. Now, a couple things help this to work out. Compositionally speaking, this is the only thing we hear chord-wise and melodic-wise. So one rule in music, as simple as it sounds in composition, is the tool of repetition. Anything, regardless of how strange it sounds, will sound less strange the second time. Now, if something is like atonal, meaning it doesn't follow any sort of scale, it's really random in nature, it takes quite a few listens for us to be able to sort of remember it enough to recognize that it's the same thing when we hear it again. But the more chordal things are, or the more they follow like typical tonic music theory, like we've talked about in all of these songs that are popular, pretty much every song that's ever been popular uses some sort of harmony that is, again, organized. But this, so what I'm trying to say is that this is really strange, but because it repeats the whole song, we get a lot more comfortable with it. It allows us, the beat, to do a lot of really cool things. So sometimes the drums start here and make this feel like it's the beginning of the sample or the riff. I'm not sure if this is a sample. I doubt it. Now, just on a side note, this is really common with a lot of Drake's music, but I have a low pass filter going on all of those instruments. That works a couple for a couple reasons. One, when we're cutting off the highs, it's going to make like any track sound a lot smoother. But what it also does is it mix-wise, it makes it really possible for the vocal to sit on top, because if everything has like the top end shaved off, but the vocal is sitting right on top, it's going to cut through the mix because it's the only thing happening in that frequency spectrum during the mix. Cool. So again, there's some interesting instrumentation going on here. I, again, didn't get it perfect, but if you liked what I did, I'm using Arturia's Mellotron for 2 channels. I'm using what is the Mellotron like brace, it's brass, but it has like 5 S's on it. As one of the presets. I guess I'm using Strawberry Flutes as my secondary one. And then I think I'm using a piano. So then my brass sound is coming from East-West Instruments. I haven't done any videos on these plugins. I'm definitely going to, but because they're somewhat cost prohibitive, I didn't want to in the beginning. So this is like one of the best orchestral tools on the planet. They have something called Composer Cloud where you can pay per month, which is what I do. It's been a great investment. So shout out to East-West. It's worth every penny for that. I use this for almost everything I do for television, or anytime I have to create something organic like a violin or piano or something that we all know what it sounds like because we've heard them in the real environment, like acoustically before. I come to East-West. And I'm using the CP80 within Goliath electric pianos. And then I'm also using the brass. I guess I have these labeled wrong. Do I? Brass within Goliath. So that's showing it. And then our brass section is up here. Sometimes whatever East-West, this middle part, the part up here in the right, is telling us what plugin we have. This middle section is just kind of like searching for a new preset, and sometimes when you create a duplicate for whatever reason, it looks like you've searched for the same thing in both channels. Anyway, don't mean to digress. Let's talk about the drums. The drums come in. It has a halftime backbeat. That makes sense because we're at 134 beats per minute, which would be pretty hop-in, pretty quick, sort of techno almost, if we had a standard backbeat. So this clap being on the 2 and the 4 would be standard. It's on beat 3, which again we call halftime. We get 2 quarter notes of kick in the beginning, and then the second measure we get some syncopation. That's a dotted quarter note and an eighth note. And then another syncopated kick, and on beat 4. And then that pattern repeats. And then one thing that's interesting is like this is halfway through. The drums don't start right on the 1. So the pattern really starts that we can recognize in the next measure. So in other words, if I combine these 2, it starts to look like the full pattern. Another interesting thing about the track is we've got groups of 3. So the drums are, the pattern repeats every 3 measures, which again is a pretty cool production technique. I was just watching the deadmau5 Masterclass, and he was talking about how in some of his tracks, he'll write chord progressions that are like 5 measures long or 3 measures long. And the interesting thing when we're in 4/4 is that if everything else is rotating on like a group of 4 and you do something that's on a group of 3, it starts to rotate as the groove goes, which makes for kind of something slightly confusing, but it's a cool element to listen to. And then finally, let's talk about the cymbal pattern. We mainly have eighth notes. However, at the very beginning, we get what is triplets, so eighth note triplets. If you see, I switched the grid here, so now these are each on the box. and I go back to the eighth note grid, they're off. So 4 eighth note triplets in a row, followed by our straight eighth notes, that 3 eighth notes, 3 16th notes. So that's an interesting thing groove-wise. If you use some triplets, 8th note or 16th note triplets, and straight 8th notes and 16th notes for other parts, it creates a pretty cool sound that we all know from hip-hop music and trap music, if that is something you're into. So yeah, I'll play the drums this section so we can look at it. Nice. That little breakdown section has our kick on the first measure, and then just 2 eighth notes of hi-hats, and then silence. Pretty cool. All right, finally, let's talk about our bass line. Cool. So mainly what our bass line is doing is it's following the low notes that are happening in the other channels. So the notes that we're using, and this is super common, are basically following these sort of low notes. So down here we're at a D, up here, we're at an A. No, I was right. We're at a D, and then up here at a D and a low D. So that's going to bring me to one of my other points. Here's basically the bass line. Let's play it, and then I'll talk about that. Cool. So again, these notes actually follow the walking down chords. So we had like A minor, G major, F major. We got an E there. Here we had F major, E minor. So these notes do follow the low notes from the chord progression. However, we get this cool, we hit D and then we go up to F, down to quick E, and then the same thing, D up to A. And instead of coming back to D, we walk down G, E, back to D. Cool. So what I wanted to mention that I was alluding to earlier is that we get a lot more of the note D in the bass line than we do the note A, which is our root. We do get the A in the bass that's held for more than a measure, but because we get so many of like D as being the bass note, I almost wanted to call this song d.r.u. So that's essentially the white note scale built off of D. If you were to play D to D white keys, that would be d.r.u. So just like A minor and C major, we have all of the same chords. So the chords won't tell us that we're either in d.r.u. or A minor. So what else tells us that? Well, really it's where the song resolves. It's the note that feels like it's home, or it's like the main note. And because the sub is so important, especially to the sound, I'm leaning towards calling this d.r.u. However, if you are some fellow composers, anyone out there schooled in the modes, let me know what you would call this. One of the coolest things about music theory is that it gives us the ability to talk about like note names and rhythms and chords, but when it comes to music, there are no real rules in music. The theory helps us to better understand it, or to talk about it, to digest it in maybe an intellectual capacity. But at the end of the day, sometimes weirder stuff sounds good. Sometimes the key of a song is somewhat interpretable. There's lots of popular songs that feel like they could be in the relative major or minor. So again, nothing changes in terms of the notes you've seen today. It really just changes as to how we label this song. But regardless, we could say it's, basically like a d.r.u. meets A minor groove. It has the same 8-bar pattern that repeats, although a lot of the phrasing is built on 3-measure sequences. We're at 134 beats per minute and in 4/4. So what does this tell us as a takeaway? Well, one, if you're going to do something interesting in terms of the number of measures you have for something you're going to sample or a groove, do it. It definitely will work. But bear in mind that if you don't repeat this, so if we were to have a bunch of different sections in the song, we might start to lose our sense of this making sense. So hopefully this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, you would help me out a lot by subscribing to the channel. And if you do, I'll see you guys next time. If you have any ideas for other songs I should do breakdowns for, leave me a comment below. I'll link to some of my music below if you're curious if I can make music in addition to talking about other people's music. I like to try to do both. So I hope you have a great day. Go make some cool music, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.